Good morning, good afternoon, wherever you are in the world. This is Servan from Conscious Innovation. And at the moment, we are digging deep into the concept of trust through our learning project called the House of Trust. And it's aimed at people, some of you who love to invest and positively influence social change. Okay, so trust is a very vast topic. It touches our political systems or home or workplaces or communities and our inner lives. There is never enough conversation or exploration about trust. So today we're going to have another one. And I'm thrilled to welcome Roshana Arasaratnam today, who is a specialist in sustainable and public finance, among many other things. And welcome, Roshana.
Thanks, Savannah, and thanks for this opportunity.
You're welcome. So tell us a bit about you, who you are briefly, just so that people know who they are listening to, who you are and what you love to focus on in your life and work.
Sure. So I'm Roshana Arasaratnam. My why is, how we break down boundaries between disciplines and organisations in order to move money for good. And I'm agnostic about, what sector or where that operates. But what I'm really interested in the moment is about social policy and how we bring that into the financial arena, and particularly maybe how financial services are thinking about that. So I've had a squiggly career, moving between private and public sector and not-for-profits, and across disciplines as well. So I'm an economist, a chartered accountant. I'm probably lapsed in both of those, but also an interest in social policy and organisational design as well.
Wow. So I'm hearing that you speak many, many different languages, sector languages. You have a lot of different content. Your head must be very, very busy.
I think I'm a translator. I'm trying to help people communicate across those boundaries.
Fantastic. We need more of you. So, Roshana, I'm curious, what is your definition of trust in a nutshell?
Yeah, this because you kindly shared a question in advance, it really got me thinking. And so I'm an economist by training. I mean, that's my primary discipline. And I went back to economics, and where it isn't really actually defined in that way, but I think it's about kind of that free exchange, kind of one-to-one or between groups, without the monitoring and without the checking in. It's kind of that kind of openness to exchange. And actually, when I was thinking about this, it really took me back to, so my undergraduate dissertation was actually it's a book called The Logic of Collective Action, and it's about by Manka Olson. So it's not an economics classic, but it's about how groups come together and why do groups form. And I think at the heart of that is about trust. It is about how we open ourselves up to accepting, and in economics it's kind of about exchange, and we kind of think that's quite transactional, but actually it's kind of more than that. So that's how I don't think I have a definition, but I think that's how I sort of approach it.
So yeah, the exchange, and it feels as it connects back to that role of yours, which is being a translator. Is this easier when you are to facilitate exchange, or to be the exchange when it's easy for you to translate it, to have knowledge or understanding or awareness of different worlds?
I think it's really important if you're going to bring sectors together, particularly between private and public and a not-for-profit. You need that empathy to break down those boundaries. And I think we're going to need that approach if we want to move capital for good. So I think it's really important. It's definitely been a driving force for me to do that across different sectors.
So let me just see what dots I can connect here. You got the translation, you got the knowledge and awareness of different sectors and content and fields of works. You have that empathy to make that exchange flow nicely. And there is an article of you recently on the social media, which has a great success. And that it really resonates with me as well, very much so. It's called Specialist Generalist Will Save the World. And it's pretty much what you've just said, right?
Yeah, so that was inspired by, I have a friend who set up a consultancy and she calls herself a specialist generalist. And then there's also a book called Range by David Epstein. And it really speaks about how important it is to have people who can move a lot across sectors and disciplines. Not everyone has to do it, but it's important to value that as a skill set. And I think at the time, I mean, I just left a corporate role in a big organisation. I was there for nearly a decade. You know, I'm finding having that conversation with recruiters and others a bit difficult because they want to put you in a box. And actually, if your value is actually being a connector, then you don't want to be put in a box. You want to say my value is actually I can do different things. And you need the specialist, but you also need the wide angle lens to bring in new ideas. And I teach a class in sustainable finance at Cambridge, and when I see other people on swiggly careers, people specialised in human rights are now working in ESG, or lawyers turned impact investors. So they also are trying to break down these barriers and silos in order to say, if we want to move money to do good, we're going to have to let go of maybe something that we are doing now, or we need to bring in something new from a different area as well, because no one person or area has the answers. If we had the answers, it's just there wouldn't be an industry in sustainable finance. It would be done.
Fixed a lot of things, right?
Exactly.
I wonder, I'm curious about people's assumptions and thoughts and feelings, and just I'm always want to check what's in the way. So about for instance, the recruiters, what do they assume that might currently stop them from trusting and sort of untraditional background in the sector?
Well, I think as soon as someone strays from the norm or the escalator path, I think there's always a question mark about, well, what's this person trying to do? And then it might get to us like, well, are you really committed to this? Or how deep really is your expertise? Or is there a reason? And I haven't been moving frequently, but I have moved between sectors. So I think it just raises a question mark for some people. I would have to say that actually in those years when you move, that's always been my biggest growth, because that's the year when you learn the most and you're most challenged. One move between private to public sector actually probably didn't work out that well for me, and I didn't necessarily stay in that role for as long as I thought I would. But actually the move when I moved from the public sector to the private sector, and at the point where a lot of public sector organisations were coming to the capital markets, I think having come from that sector very much hopefully built empathy, because I came from the sector that was going to the capital markets and also had that credibility with investors and as well. But also you're trying to deal with fear. I mean, why does trust not build? It's about fear and a sort of power dynamic as well. And I think in all areas of financing, there is, here's the investor, here's the investee who holds the power. And it's exactly the same dynamic in not-for-profits with grants, and the same dynamic with the public sector between taxpayer and public sector, or even central government and local government. And so for me, actually having moved between sectors, I think I would hope breaks down some of those barriers of fear and helps to build trust. And I think I still think it's at the heart of moving capital, because if you think about all the moves towards disclosure or even impact investing, there's still disaccountability, which is kind of at the heart of it. It's like, I don't trust you I'm giving you this money to do this, but I don't trust you to do it without putting in place these parameters.
Mm.
And I'm not saying that we should get rid of, having a percentage return or an impact, but I'm just saying that's part of it. It can be part of that discussion. And I find that at odds with, so I'm on the board of a women's rights organisation, and we're really trying to push flexible funding. So we give money to our partners, but we don't necessarily specify what it's for, to kind of unpick that construct. But that's really at odds in a way with almost the push, in some way, in impact investing, which is very much, we're strengthening that accountability and maybe controls, if you see it that way, or even, that increased disclosure as well. So I think there are sort of contradictory forces that are kind of pushing against what we're trying to do.
So do you have a sort of a story there that illustrates, or I'm keeping in mind confidential data, is there a story that can illustrate as well these elements, and more of these elements that constitute trust, these unconditional things? You mentioned empathy, you mentioned flexibility, you mentioned that translation effort, you mentioned a lot of things already. What kind of, do you have a story that
I think just on a very personal basis. So I recently invested in a startup.
Yeah.
And you'd think as a finance person, I'd look at a business plan and do all the check. I didn't do any of that. I fundamentally believed in what they were doing. I believed in the people, and I gave them my money. So that's an extreme version. But I don't regularly watch Dragon's Den, but when I talk to people who are in fintech or venture capital, they essentially are investing in the person. They're trusting that that person or the team can deliver. It's a bet, and there's a probability, but that's what they're investing in. So I just think on a very personal basis, we make these decisions every day, right? On where we invest, whether it's our time or effort or energy, and all of those things, not even money, and in all of those things is an element of, that it will be reciprocated as well, which is also a big part of economic, is that, you build trust to have that reciprocity as well.
So Roshana, let's go back onto that specialist generalist topic, not issue, topic.
Yeah.
And I'm curious I'm aware that, many people are like that in the world, and scratching their head as to how they can share all the good they can bring in the world, and how they can share that to more people and be heard, and how they can contribute. So I wonder, what's the mechanism for building inner trust when you are a specialist generalist in that social impact investment ecosystem?
Yeah, no, I was thinking about this as particularly sort of, what does inner trust look like? Is that, how do you internalize it? So I think out in the world, it's always just about having that open mindset. It's sort of, I think, specialist generalists, we find everything interesting. So, here's this thing. So a little bit magpie about it. But what we're trying to encourage everyone or invite people is to keep being open, to keep looking across and find value in all sorts of different things, and not to close down opportunities. So that's what I think we're sending out into the world. I have to say, I think there are issues in all professions, but I think particularly in finance, there is sort of a given, we have always done it like this. We've always used this matrix. This is the risk and return paradox that we're used to. And I think, we still are moving the dial between risk, return and impact. that's where we're trying to move towards. So I think the best thing is always just to, trust in your North Star, like this is what we're moving towards. Mm-hmm. You'll find your community. So from that article, just a number of people who said, oh yes, this really resonates with me and how I'm trying to fill my box, trying to fill lots of boxes. But then I think it's really an invitation for other people to keep being curious and open and to understand that we don't have the answers. None of us have the answers. So to keep working together.
That's interesting, that element of collaboration and search and quest about solving a problem together rather than talking about the job you want to do, because the jobs evolve when you have a big problem to solve, right?
Yeah.
An article not so long ago about asking kids, instead of asking kids, young people, what do you want to do when you grow up, to instead ask them, what problems do you want to tackle?
Yes, and why do you want to tackle them?
Exactly.
So not only the what, but the why, because that's going to be the driver.
And
that's the thing that's going to make sense when you look back.
And that's so interesting, is in the to know how to do it, then they have to offer you the job.
Yeah, well, yes, but I think it's an understanding that no one person has the answers. What the specialist generalist is going to be really good is that sort of joining the dots or bringing those left field ideas and keeping that sense of openness across lots of different people who will all be bringing their special talents as well.
Oh, this is wonderful. I mean, thank you for giving us pointers to look at, that notion of convening, of connecting the dots, of inviting people to collaborate and join a conversation, of being open to all the knowledge and the awareness in the room so that we've got a bigger picture of what's really going on, and to serve a purpose with all these elements. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Thank you so
much. You're welcome.
Is there anything else you want to invite people to think about before we close this conversation, Roshana?
I think just to be, continuing to question yourself about your own openness to new ideas, because even in the impact investing community of the sustainable finance, we are also guilty of our own bubble and not being open as we would. And so, with the crisis in Ukraine, there has been a lot of criticism about, well, is this the end of ESG? And actually, I think it actually opens up to, we need the scrutiny about where values come with moving capital. So I think it's sort of, to keep sort of questioning, well, how open am I to new ideas and new ways of thinking? Because that's what's going to keep moving us forward.
What a wonderful homework that you're sharing with us today. Thank you so much, Roshana.
You're welcome. Thank you so much for the opportunity.